around a lot growing up. So from state to state, my dad was in the corporate world. He kept taking different jobs. And then we kept moving from state to state. So these were big moves, from the north where I was a skier down to Florida where there's no snow. So big changes. I went to two different high schools, two different middle schools. So I was always basically forced to meet new people, start new friendships, adopt to different places. And so I think that, at the time it was really difficult, but I think looking back, that sort of made me be who I am and be able to be adaptable in lots of different situations and be very curious about the world and different places. So after graduating high school, I went to Colorado where I didn't know anybody, didn't have any family. And yeah, after 2 years of college, I decided to take a semester off and save up some money during the summer. And I did a 3 month trip to Latin America by myself. So I just got on a plane and I was backpacking. I just wanted to see the world. I was really curious to see more of the world. I had been out of the country, I think to Mexico and Canada at that point, but nowhere significant. And so, yeah, I took a semester off. And before leaving, I was thinking, what is the best way to share my experiences with friends and family back home when I'm done? And taking photos obviously was I think the best solution back then. This is pre-phone, pre-digital cameras. And so I bought a Canon camera and I don't know, maybe 20 rolls of slide film. And I did my trip for 3 months. I learned a lot on that trip. And photography really kept me grounded. It really started opening up more doors when I was there. And I think the main thing is like it keeps me really curious, right? Photography sort of opens up doors that otherwise might not open for me. It still does today. And I think keeping this curiosity alive, this sort of wonder, is really important. And it was important back then. And that's, I think, what got me into photography. And it still keeps me into photography today because I get to meet all kinds of new people, see new places, and then also learn about new ways of thinking, of doing things, different industries, all kinds of things photography has opened up for me. But yeah, so that's sort of where it started. I had the travel bug. I wanted to see the world. I was curious about the world. I went back to school after that trip, and during the summer, I was able to find ways to keep traveling during my summertime back to Mexico, Guatemala, Belize. And these trips became more for the travel, but more focused on photography, actually. I was getting more and more into it. Just learning. I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but during one of my trips to Guatemala, I met an American photographer who, this is pre-digital, and he was driving his car through Mexico, the Yucatan, Belize, Guatemala, and we had met in Mexico with another friend of mine. And he's like, yeah, come along in the car for a while. So I ended up hanging out with this photographer for a week, driving around in his car, and he was really into it. He had a cooler in his back of his car with hundreds of rolls of film. And he had started actually one, Tommy is his name. He had started, this is when the internet was really just starting. And he had started one of the first online stock sites for people to buy his photography. So this is like before the big online stock agencies like Corbis and Getty and all of these things.
This was around like 90s, I suppose,
This was
or
late.
80s.
This would have been like early 2000s, maybe 2000, 2001, right. Somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. But he had a site called lumica.org. I think it's probably still up, but he used to scan all of his pictures. He was a great photographer. And he would scan all of his images, and then people would go and people would buy his images online. So he had sort of made this into a business. But anyways, I spent a week with Tommy. He was pretty inspiring I was like, wow, I would love to do something like this, with my life. And I was learning a lot from him. So he was one of sort of my early influences on photography. but yeah, so I finished college in Colorado, and then the next month I was in the Philippines in Palawan for a 2.5 year Peace Corps stunt. So yeah, that's what brought me to the Philippines. But those were the early days of photography. It was just a hobby. Um, wasn't really thinking I'm going to do this for a career, except for those times with Tommy. I was thinking, wow, this would be a great way to go around the world and shoot and pretty
But how are
idealistic.
you making money while you were doing those trips though? How are you like funding yourself?
So those that first semester that I took off, I worked the whole summer as a camp counselor actually. And so I was able to save enough money to buy a ticket and have a minimal expenses backpacking throughout Latin America. So um, yeah, I was able to. I don't know how many. It's probably like $2,000 or $3,000. It wasn't a lot. Like I was definitely on a budget for those trips. And then the following summers, it was the same thing. I would work for like a couple of months, and then the last month of the summer, I would take the trip. So um, I was fortunate that I could find those types of jobs to save enough, and but they were definitely on a shoestring. They were,
But so I'm just curious, like how what were the places that you were staying when you were doing all those travels? Like I can imagine it's not the typical like hotel.
no, no, these are hostels. And actually, I in college I was volunteering for an NGO called Idea Wild. And Idea Wild is a conservation NGO, and they would buy equipment for different biology researchers throughout the world, so that they could actually do their research in the field. So they would buy binoculars for ornithologists doing bird work, or they would buy microscopes for uh, different research needed in the lab. So they bought all of this different equipment for biologists or conservationists in the field. So I was volunteering for them at the time in Colorado. And so Wally, the founder of the NGO, hooked me up with a lot of the different biologists in these countries that they had given equipment to. And so I had a lot of actually interesting contacts in the countries when I arrived. I got to go see their projects. I got to go to the universities, see what kind of lab work they were doing. I actually made some presentations on behalf of Idea Wild to let other students know that they can apply for assistance through the NGO. So I actually had to give these presentations in Spanish. So I had to catch up on my Spanish at the time. So yeah, it was definitely like as a young as a young kid, kind of off on my own for the first time, um, seeing the world. It was quite an experience. So
Right. How many years were you doing this prior to like when you arrived in the Philippines?
so I took that one semester off. That was a big trip, and then I think I went on two other trips before I graduated college, before coming to the Philippines. So
Right.
yeah,
And what college course were you taking then?
yeah. So I was studying wildlife biology with an interdisciplinary study in conservation biology. So it was very yeah. We took like ecology courses and mammalogy, ornithology, ichthyology, all the different studies of different uh, types of animals, and then wildlife management, learning how to manage deer and elk populations and work for the Forest Service or the National Park Service. That was sort of it was the College of Natural Resources. So
Yeah, so I guess you were already like introduced to like taking photographs about like nature and the outdoors back then.
yeah, it's actually an interesting point I was going to bring up because during that course of study, right, we learned about all of these different topics. They even had a population biology course. So we learned about basically all the course was about how humans are ruining the planet and all the negative things that we're doing to the environment. But there was never like even through all of these courses, right? It was taught how to manage populations and figure out mathematical ways to protect or create protected areas. And but throughout all of my education, we never talked about the human element and why people are important, are an important part of this equation, because people are part of the landscape. But we always try to sort of, in the academic world, is like people were over here and then nature is over here, right? And it's a very Western way of thinking about things. Um, and so when I started learning about indigenous philosophy and the way indigenous communities think, it's very opposite, right? They see themselves as part of nature and not separable. Like they're not conquerors of the land, but they're one with the land. So it's a very different way of thinking. And in actuality, indigenous people are the best conservationists because they protect like 80% of the world's biodiversity. So they're obviously doing something right. So why none of these concepts were taught to, throughout a 4-year degree in biology. So anyways, I started learning these things as I started learning more about indigenous communities and the way that and the reason why land is so important to these communities. That's sort of the underlying theme of all the work that I do, is this relationship that communities have with the land. And the communities always say land is life. This is their motto. It's not really a motto, it's a way of life, because land is life, and literally, because if you take away the land, everything else sort of follows, right? Culture, language, identity, all of these things.
Yeah. And I think even their religion is based on like connection with the land, right?
And yeah, they're more so. Uh, there's a lot of spiritual connections to the land. And it's actually these spiritual connections in a lot of ways which have helped protected the land over generations and generations. Like in the Cordillera, for example, right? In Mountain Province. So the forest that is still protected in the upper Cordillera, it actually provides water to 20 million Filipinos in the lowland. And the reason these forests haven't been cut down or over time is because the Kankanai, the people in the Cordillera, believe that there's spirits that live in the forest. And if you not just good spirits, but also evil spirits, right? That they're afraid of. So their parents would, when they were raised, their parents would say, you don't go into that forest because you're going to cross this particular bad spirit, and then you're going to have repercussions for that, right? So there's this deep spiritual belief in the forest. There's belief that there's different spirits that live in the forest, but there's also beliefs that everything has a spirit. So the trees, the soil, the air. So it's a very different way. It's very much one with the earth.
Right. And sorry if I have to touch up on about their spirituality, but just a question about this. Did you find that there was like a sort of commonality between the tribes and their beliefs?
So there's a lot of similarities, but then there's a lot of nuanced differences as well. So each, every tribe, every community speaks a different language. They have their own culture, their own beliefs, their own rituals. So there's a lot of diversity amongst the different groups. But yes, there's this commonality where the communities believe and they understand that the land is really the most important thing. And so it's for different reasons, but yes, there's this overwhelming spiritual connection to the land. And so like that example was in the Cordillera, but there's all kinds of examples where spiritual beliefs have protected areas for thousands of years. Like for example, the Aita in Zambales in Pampanga. I mean, they believe that Mount Pinatubo is their deity, and it goes by the name of Apple Nelmaliari. So Mount Pinatubo, to them, it's called Apple Nelmaliari, which is their deity. And they believe that Apple Nelmaliari is very powerful, right? And so in 1991, when the eruption happened, before the eruption happened, actually, they were doing a lot of geothermal drilling in Mount Pinatubo. And they were also cutting down a lot of trees. And so the Aita communities believe that Apple Nelmaliari was upset because of these things that are happening in the sacred ground. And so that's why the Aita believed that the eruption happened, because Apanamearme was upset, and this was the retribution, right? And so it's just a different way of looking at things that happened. And yeah, it's a completely different perspective on life, on the way that they see the land, and the reasons that they protect the land, and the reasons that they have this relationship with the land. And there's this active reciprocity. There's give, there's take, and it's very different from the way that a lot of us have been raised. Not only our educational systems, but yeah, just people that grow up in a city environment. Yeah, we're taught differently about things. Whereas these communities, they really have, they generation after generation, they've lived on this particular plot of land, this area, so they've gotten to know it and understand it and have a relationship with it all this time. So.
Right. And okay, last question about this the religion. Uh, are there like beliefs being preserved up until now, or like maybe the Western like religion is slowly creeping into their tribes?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think spirituality and culture. I hate using the word preserved because that's culture, like language, everything is always dynamic. It's always changing, and that's the only way things can survive is um, when culture is changing and it's being adopted to different times, right? So that's important. I think if we just try to say it's going to be preserved and sort of like this box in this past, that's not that's that's not reality, and that's not how you actually save and prolong culture, language. Um, but yes, I mean, a lot of the communities have, they're a part of different Christian denominations now. But you see this mix, right? So you see like this sort of like folk Catholicism, folk Christianity, where they've incorporated their traditional beliefs into some of the more Western beliefs that have, the churches that have come in. So you see this a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay,
But
so
that's not to
yeah.
say that it's bad, or it's what the community as wants to do, and they understand. Um, but I think communities are starting to understand more and more why it's important to continue understanding, their traditional beliefs as well. So
Mhm. Okay, so I just want to go back when you said you joined the Peace Corps here in the Philippines. Could you tell us like what was the objective back then, and was it the start of like you staying here in the Philippines for
yeah,
good?
honestly, before joining Peace Corps, I knew nothing about the Philippines. I was ignorant. I knew it was like some islands over there. Actually, my friend Wally, who I was telling you about earlier, who would find equipment to give to biologists throughout the world, he had just been to the Philippines on a trip. And so during my Peace Corps interview, they said, well, there's a program leaving in January that's most likely going to be the Philippines based on the program that you can join. So I got really excited because it was, kind of far away. It was something different to me. And so Wally told me, yeah, the Philippines is a great place. Like the people are wonderful and it's beautiful there. And he was just telling me all these great things about the Philippines, but I knew nothing about the country. Um, so yeah, I had my Peace Corps interview, and I got my first invitation actually, and it was for Guatemala. And I actually declined the invitation because I was so excited. I had my heart set sort of coming on the Philippines after I had done a little bit of research at that point. So I was a bit shocked that I got this invitation to Guatemala. So I actually declined it, and I think a week later I got another invitation in the mail. And it came by mail. It was for the Philippines, and I accepted that. And I was off on the next month. We had a 3-day training, a 3-day send off in Seattle. We met the group of 50 that we all came with. And then we had a 3-month, I think we were in Manila for a week when we arrived. And then we took a boat, a 24-hour boat down to Bohol. And we were in Bohol for 3 months of training. with the 50 volunteers and the whole Philippine Peace Corps staff. Yeah, we did our training there. And then after that, all of the volunteers went to their different communities for 2 years of service, of volunteer service. So we had different programs back then. It still is today, but there were education volunteers, there were environmental volunteers, there were business sort of business advisor volunteers. So everyone had their different expertise, and they are all paired with a different local organization or government agency, and that's where they spent their 2 years to help out in whatever capacity the organization needed help. So,
Right. And so at that time, like, which area were you assigned in the Peace
because
Corps?
my background was in environmental and wildlife biology, I was assigned in Palawan, and actually this my first assignment. This is actually how I met my wife. She was my language teacher. Her family's from Surigao, and I was originally assigned to Dinagat Island in Surigao. But during our training in Bohol, I'm not sure if you remember, there was a bombing at the Davao airport back then, like 20, this would have been 2003. So anyway, they pulled all the volunteers out of all of Mindanao. So I got reassigned to Palawan, where I spent my 2 years with the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. It's basically like the DENR for Palawan. It's a special presidential proclamation for Palawan. So they're the big environmental organization there. And I was doing lots of different stuff. I was doing marine surveys. They were doing something called the econ zoning at the time. So they were collecting all this data to try to zone northern Palawan. And so we were collecting marine data and doing interviews with communities, doing seagrass bed surveys. So we basically spent months in the field, and the whole entirety coastline of Taytay, El Nido, Busuanga, Coron, we surveyed the whole coast for coral and seagrass, taking data. And then I also did some environmental education as well, which is sort of where my interest in photography came in. This is pre-digital, or right sort of when digital was starting, but digital cameras were not really out yet. So I was able to find some old film cameras from people back home. I asked friends and family if they could find any old cameras. So I think they sent me maybe 10 old cameras. And I started this environmental education program using photography in high schools in Puerto Princesa. So I think we visited maybe 5 different high schools, and we had some basic photography courses, and then we gave the students the cameras to go take pictures of their surroundings and any kind of issues they wanted to photograph. And then we developed the film, and the students got to look at their photos and talk about them. And so it was just a different way to sort of engage in some of the environmental topics of the time. But yeah, kind of using photography. It was a bit more challenging back then than it is today.
Right. But how did you transition? So when you said environmental photography, did this include already the tribes back then, or it was purely on nature based?
So at this time, I was, again, photography was really just a hobby of mine. I wasn't actively shooting. But this is when we were doing those surveys in Northern Palawan, this is the first time I got to actually meet indigenous communities here in the Philippines. And it was with some Tagbanwa communities in Busuanga. So it was during these surveys, we would visit the local communities, the remote villages. I remember specifically this one Tagbanwa community on the beach, and they had these big cauldrons of water, and they were cooking like 3 different octopuses, and we had octopus for lunch, and it was just very like visually stimulating. And so that was really my first interaction with indigenous communities. It was during that field work in Northern Palawan with the Tagbanwa. So that's, yeah. And then later on is when I really started to engage more with the communities. This is after Peace Corps. I finished my service. I went back to the US, and I was doing some seasonal work on commercial fishing vessels in Hawaii, just trying to make a living. And so using my degree, was collecting data with fisheries. And eventually I ended up back in Cebu, and I decided to say, okay, I'm gonna give this 5, 10 years to see if I can really make a living at photography. Um, and it wasn't like a straight shot. Like I had to keep going back time to time to do work to make a living. Um, but I was really starting to pursue photography as a career. The Indigenous and the Katatubo project was really just it was really just a personal project. So I was I was taking any work that would come my way, photography wise. I started doing weddings back then. Um,
Oh, really?
Events, yeah, that was long. That was
Here in the Philippines or abroad?
yeah. I did a handful of weddings and events. I won't do those anymore, but but it was good learning. Like it was, it's weddings. You, you, you touch on everything, right? Like you have to be on the move. You have to anticipate things. You have to be ready to catch these certain moments. And so it taught you a lot of like about uh, anticipating moments and yeah, it's a good learning experience for sure. I think any when you're starting out, like any kind of experience is a good experience. So you learn how to change settings on your camera, you figure out how to compose, all of those things. So,
Yeah, I'm just curious because maybe there are also those who are interested in taking up photography as a career. But in your case, maybe how were you able to transition fully to like picking a subject matter that you really like from like making ends meet, like making all the money to able to sustain you. So like
yeah,
yeah, maybe you could give some advice or how did you do it?
it's hard and it's a little bit of luck, but I always my advice really is um just sort of explore what it is that interests you and don't quit your day job. Like you need to make a living. I mean, and everyone's situation is different, right? So some people have families, some people um, are single, and it offers them a lot more flexibility. So I can't speak, but I can only speak for what like how my journey has been. Um, but I really worked on creating a strong portfolio at that time because I knew actually another friend, Mitchell Kanashkevich, I was really inspired by his work, and he always told me, Jacob, you just really have to build up a strong portfolio, and then eventually that portfolio will start working for you. But if you if you try to sell yourself without yet having like a strong body of work, then you're selling yourself short. So spend a year, spend 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however long it takes, while you're still, finding other ways to make a living to build up this strong portfolio. Figure out what you like shooting, figure out what your voice is going to be. And then at the end of that, you'll have a body of work that you can use to start pitching, to start selling yourself, and then eventually that work will start working for you. So that's sort of what and that was at that time. Things are maybe different now. There's a lot more
Yeah, yeah.
visual media in the
Yes,
world.
yeah.
Um, so I mean that was before Facebook and Instagram and all of the social media. And so, my body of work was on my website and people actually went to Google and searched and they found you online, would write you an email. So things are changed now. So um, yeah, I think finding something that truly resonates with you, something that you enjoy shooting. Are you going to use photography as a form of self-expression, of art? Do you really want to document world events? I mean, photography there's a long spectrum of things you can shoot. So you got to sort of find what your interests are. And start out slow and eventually your path will open up and opportunities will come if you remain curious, like I was talking about. Like that's sort of what keeps me going. Like you know when there's a new job that is offered to me and it's something totally different, I don't know nothing about the work they're doing or the industry or whatever, like I'm interested. And so that it keeps me excited and it keeps me energized that I can learn something new about what I'm shooting. So I think photographers that are really curious about either if it's a certain topic or a certain subject or whatever is it's a good mentality, or it's a good way to approach things. And also, I'll say that the most successful photographers are those that are also specialists in a certain field. So if you look at some of the most successful photographers, like the most successful architect photographer or the most successful photographers that work in the archaeology field, these are also likely archaeologists or architects or biologists that are, that have taken up photography and shoot the natural world because they have an interest in that topic, but they're also experts, or they have a background, they can understand, and they know how to approach the subject matter in a meaningful way. And again, they know how to anticipate, and they understand the background of what they're shooting. And so that's really important. So you'll find that, you might, I wouldn't suggest like studying photography in school. I would say study a topic that you're really interested in. It could be photography on the side, but if you're interested in history, then study the type of history you're interested in, and then figure out a way to use photography and history together to say something, or to create awareness, or whatever it is that you're interested in, right? I think that's a better route to go for young people
Right.
just starting out.
Mhm. And you mentioned you're working with different companies. Is that you're still doing right now? Like you have to work with different companies, so it's more like you're a freelance photography, right?
Yeah, I'm all
Photographer.
freelance, so I take whatever work comes my way, or what, and so there are months that are great, there are months that are quiet. That's just the life of freelance work. Um, and it's important to really diversify now. So, I do some workshops, I do stock photography, I put out a book, do some teaching, do assignment work. Yeah, so I think it's important to diversify, especially as you start getting older as well. You have to figure out other means to use the expertise that you gained over your career, to teach others, but also to figure out new revenue streams, as well. Because if you're an assignment photographer and you're relying solely on that, like, things can change just like that. Um, During COVID is a great example, right? Basically, all assignment work dried up for 2 years. There was no work. The NGO work stopped. The projects were either put on hold. People weren't allowed to travel, whatever the reason. All of that work, the editorial work, the airline magazines all stopped. All of that dried up. So yeah, it's important to diversify and figure out ways to get grants for like personal projects, which is really important. So there's different ways to make income and make ends meet. But yeah, when you're freelance, you're on your own, so you got to figure out how to do it. So
Yeah. But are you like teaching any photography class here in the Philippines? Because I can imagine that could be that's something that is plus with your advocacy, that's something that is valuable. I can see.
currently, no. I used to do a couple of uh, small group workshops. So it was basically for foreign, mostly Americans, that would come here for a few weeks, and it was a tour slash photography tour. So we take them to different places, um, let them shoot interesting subjects, and then teach photography as well. But I haven't done those in a while. Um, so, but I've given some talks at universities and whatnot, but not a course. Yeah, maybe at some point down the line
Yep,
that's
yep,
that's an
yeah,
option.
yeah. Because I can imagine, like, I can see like street photography is something that is popular here in the Philippines, but I can see that it's also nice to have like what you're doing, like photography in the more rural areas.
Right, right. Yeah. There's definitely an interest. I got a lot of inquiries from different people, asking to visit different communities, or I've actually done a little bit of film fixing recently. So I'm bringing some international film crews into different communities they're doing different shows or films. And so I'm the liaison between the community and uh, the production team. because I've over this time I've been able to create a lot of friendships in the communities, a lot of relationships. So it's easier for me to arrange these kinds of things when a crew wants to come in. So again, it's diversification of work, um, and now when over this time you've built up a network of people, but also you've established these relationships with different places. So you can use that to figure out other ways when someone else wants to do something with the community.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, last question before
Yeah.
we can go into the photos. Again, how many years have you been doing this photography?
Um,
Since high school, right?
since
College?
since college, and that was I think that first trip I took was 2000. So it's been like 25 years since I sort of first picked up a camera. But professionally, I've been doing it since around 2010. So yeah, um, 15, 16, something like that.
Nice. And of course, you're not just doing it here in the Philippines, right? You like I can see that in your photos, like all over the world, you're doing this.
Yeah, I do a lot of recently I've been doing a lot of these around the world trips for clients. So it's typically a trip is 8 destinations in the world, and it's like a 3 week trip. And so it's 3 days in each trip, but I'm the expedition photographer for these trips. So yeah, I'm documenting the participants on the trip, but also their experiences and the things they see. And we put books together and videos. And so I've
Nice.
been doing a number of these recently as well.
Yeah. Well, I guess I got a couple more questions, but I guess I can ask that after the photos.
Sure.
Yeah, hold on. Let's give me some time to like. Okay, so right now, what tribe are we looking at?
So this is Kuya Adolfo, and he's from the Bucolot tribe in Nueva Vizcaya in the southern Sierra Madre Mountains. And the Bucolot is the newer name for the group used to be called Ilongot. And this was traditionally a headhunter society. So I thought he was wearing the hornbill headpiece, but he's not. I have another photo of another individual wearing the hornbill headpiece, but that particular hornbill headpiece is it's really reserved for the Bukola headhunters because traditionally they would headhunt in their community as a form of passage for the men to become for the boys to become men. Uh, of course, the practice is no longer being practiced today, and this particular community is actually very Christian. It's not sure what the church is. They're actually translating the Bible into their native Bukolat language, and so they actually part of the reason why they changed their name from Ilonggo to Bukolat is to sort of separate the past into where they're going in terms of the hunting tradition that they're sort of known for. Uh, but yeah, unfortunately, Kuya has passed away already. So uh, we were just in this community last year again. This is one of the areas we went with the Canadian film crew. So they were doing a documentary on the community. So I was able to revisit the community and but yeah, this is the Okolo community in Nueva Vizcaya. Interesting, this community is at the base of a river where they built a mine, or sorry, not a mine, a dam, a large dam back in the early 2000s, I believe. Forget the name of the dam. Anyway, when they built the dam, the communities agreed to the dam being built, um, but they were only going to take like 2% of the flow of the river water. It was something really small. Today, they take 99.9% of the flow of
Wow.
the river. And so they used to fish for this native eel species uh, in the river, which they can no longer find because the river has been basically completely stopped by the dam. And this is dam that's the water is being used for down mountain agriculture in the lowlands. Nueva Vizcaya has a big rice agricultural industry. Um, and the dam also is noisy, so it scares all of the animals, the wild pig, the deer that they catch in the nearby forest. And so they have to go further in the forest to go hunting. Harder to catch fish nowadays, and it's been a big problem for the community over the past 2 decades. So they're still to this day trying to assert their rights to get uh, to get representation, to get some kind of uh, uh, either monetary or something from the company. Yeah. I believe it was an American company that built the dam, but now it's run by the Philippine government in the past 5 years, I
Oh,
believe.
wow.
So anyway, this is just one example of of displacement and large scale infrastructure projects being done in communities where the community basically has no say uh, as to what's going to happen when it's their land that it's being built on. So there's no free, prior, and informed consent, no FPIC. So there's a lot of issues around this with the communities, with dams, mines, other big, large scale infrastructure projects.
What about like adapting to agriculture? They didn't think of this particular tribe didn't think of using that.
They do. So a lot of these communities nowadays do agriculture in some form. Not per se industrial agriculture, but more small scale agriculture. Yeah. Backyard, everyday needs, maybe a little bit of surplus that they use to sell in the market.
And I guess they don't even have the money to buy all this like from the industrial agriculture food, right?
Yeah, and honestly, it's better that way because industrial agriculture, once you're tapped into that system, you have to buy the pesticides, you have to buy the seed to grow
Right.
every growing season. So there's all this capital that's needed up front for every cycle. Whereas if you're using heirloom species, you don't need to buy the seed you have the seed that you can grow. You keep a portion of it at the harvest time and you use that seed for the next season. And there's no need for these pesticides where anyway, so um, for example, like in the Cordillera, there's all these different heirloom species of rice, but because the industrial rice production has come and it's made it easier for people to grow rice, a lot of the communities there have gone away from these native heirloom varieties, right? Because it's a little bit more labor intensive. It's harder to grow sometimes. Whereas the industrial ones where you spray the pesticides and it's GMO, it's bigger or whatever, all of these things.
Right.
But yeah, so those are some of the issues around agriculture and communities but there's a market for these different heirloom varieties, and if there was support to grow at a larger scale some of these different rice varieties, for example, or other things, then I think they would probably do well in the market.
Right. And do we have like a population, like how many are left in this particular tribe?
I don't know. Yeah. Um, yeah.
But maybe like they would reach like a thousands, right?
Yeah, so this particular community is called Pelowai, um, and it's a fairly big community. So I would say 3,000 people in this community. Um, so I think majority are Bukulut. There might be some mix of other lowland ethnicities as well, but predominantly Bukulut. Yeah, and this is just one of the communities. So there's others around as well.
Okay, next image. Okay, this one. This is
Yeah, so
interesting.
this is Tumihai. This is Tumihai from the Tawat Batu tribe in southern Palawan. And the Tawat Batu have become known because they actually take shelter in the caves during the rainy season. And there's big caves in this valley. It's called Signapan Valley, and it takes basically a day of trekking to get into the community. So a day of travel from Puerto Princesa down to Rizal, and then from Rizal it's another 5 hour trek into the forest where Tumihai and his family live. So this particular community, I actually never visited them during the rainy season, so I didn't get to see them in the caves. During the drier months, they have regular homes in the valley that they live in. So we spent a week here with Tumihai and his family. They still do a lot of traditional types of hunting. They also grow corn, rice, kamote, different different produce as well. But yeah, so this is Tumihai in the forest. This is sort of the river. You can see some of the caves in the background. He's using a traditional blowgun here, and he's looking for whatever he can find, birds. So interesting. One evening, they Tumihai went out and got some rattan, and rattan is very pointy. It's very
You mean from the plant?
yeah, the vine
Mm.
of the rattan.
Oh, right.
It's very strong, but the outside of the rattan is very spiky, and it hurts. So anyway, they make this contraption with the rattan. They use the vine, and they tie all of the outside part, the needle parts, up on the tip of the stronger rattan vine, and they go up to the valley in the mountain at like dusk time where the bats are flying through, and they'll lift the
Oh,
rattan contraption up into
wow.
this outpost. And the wings of the bats will just get stuck in the rattan, and then they bring the bat back and they cook the bat. So
Yeah, you know what? I think I saw this in one of those like documentaries. So yeah, they eat bats, right?
yeah, actually, we helped the BBC did a series maybe 10 years ago called Monsoon. Visited all these places in the world where the monsoon affects different communities in different ways. And so we actually helped them go to the Tawat Batu because of the way that they go into the caves during the rainy season, right?
Right.
So I'm not sure if that was the one you saw, but there's been a couple of different bigger documentaries done on the Tawat Batu. So,
Right. Yeah. Okay. One question before we go to the next photo. What about like diseases and illness? Do these tribes are more susceptible to them, or maybe they grown immune to it?
so again, there's a lot of beliefs here, right? So in southern Palawan, in this particular area, they have the really bad variety of malaria, the cerebral malaria. So you have to be really careful because it can kill you if you catch this. But these communities, they don't take anti-malaria medication or anything, and they all seem to be okay. In the early 2000s, there were two. This is a vague story, but there were two or three reporters, journalists from Manila, who went to visit the Tawat Batu. And the story, how the community, this is how Tumihai told me the story, is that the community, the journalists were actually quite disrespectful of the community when they were there. And so like and they said you can't defecate in the river, you can't do these certain things because it's against what we believe and it's against the spirits that live in the forest. There'll be repercussions for doing these things. But they didn't listen to the community. And so they did some of these things like defecating in the river, and the journalists left, and they all actually came down with cerebral malaria. And so the community, when you asked them, they said, yeah, that was the curse put on by the spirits for not listening to, what we told them. So that's how they looked at it. And I think two of the three journalists died. I have to look up the article. Um, so, but
This
yeah,
was
so
in
this was
how
early
many?
early 2000s. He was quite a famous, I believe he was sort of a famous journalist that went there. You could find it online. Yeah, that's that. But when you hear the story from their perspective, it wasn't because they just came down with malaria, but it's the things they were doing are the reason that they got the malaria. So,
Yeah. You know what? I just interviewed someone who's practicing like ancient Filipino like spirituality and religion. So he
hmm.
also mentioned something of that sort of like disrespecting the spirits. So I'm kind of like not surprised when you like when you said those things, because it's more than a belief. Like I think that's what
More than a
they
belief.
really think that's gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So next image. Okay, this one.
So this is an open pit nickel ore mine in Surigao del Norte. And this open pit mining has been happening, I think, since the 70s. So it's been a long time now. And if you've ever been to Surigao del Norte in in the area of Claver, um, for I mean, for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, as far as the eye can see, the mountain is bare red. Like
Wow.
it's just, it's, yeah, it's, um, so I mean, I put the drone up, and as far as the drone can see, it's
Wow.
all the mountain is bald
Yeah.
and like this, right?
And sorry, if when you say open pit, what does it necessarily mean? Like,
So a lot of gold mining is done like under the ground, where
right?
open pit, it's just on top of the surface, so it's just open. So it's when it rains, the runoff can go to the ocean. There's a lot more environmental challenges with open pit mining versus closed pit. There are other challenges with closed pit as well. But for island for islands, open pit is really disastrous because of the the flow to the oceans. Like you'll see here, the oceans nearby is just it's all the water is all red. Um, and this is actually ancestral land for the Mamanwa people. So they're another indigenous community. They um, they have lived in the area for thousands of years. They're descendants of the Aita, so they're also darker skin. But they're called Mamanwa. They have their own language and culture, and they've been highly displaced by these mines ever since the 70s. um, so yeah, this is again one of the displacement issues that a lot of the communities have to deal with regarding land, right? A lot of them are forced off their land for different reasons. It could be conflict, could be these different mining projects. Um, but again, and a lot of the times they don't get anything in return, right? They don't get jobs, they don't get um, anything in return. So this is one of the big uh, for the communities. Displacement from the land is one of the big issues that many communities are dealing with, especially nowadays. Mining, and this mining has been happening in Surigao del Norte, Agusan. There's all kinds of nickel ore mining. I think Philip, this is like one of the largest nickel ore mines in the world. It's really big, and it's all nothing is processed here in the Philippines. It's all sent, I think, to Japan or China to be processed. So, um, yeah, so that's this is one of the big issues
Yeah.
that communities are dealing with.
Sorry, what year was this taken specifically?
I think this was probably 2019.
Oh, okay. So
This would be
up until now, it's still being done.
yeah.
Oh, wow. I wonder why
Um,
the government isn't
well, the
doing
government's involved.
anything.
The governors of all the
Oh,
areas
so
are
they
they own the
private
companies that are
companies,
mining.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Corruption
Remember
as
when
usual.
Gina Lopez was trying to become the
Oh,
DENR
yeah.
secretary, and she was trying to shut down all of these illegal mine operations, or mining operations that were not following the environmental standards that they should be. Um, yeah, and basically she never got put in as secretary because uh, there's too much interest. The politicians have own the companies of these mines, so of course they weren't going to appoint her as the secretary.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I've seen mines everywhere in southern Mindanao. the most beautiful place I've ever been to in my life called Mount Tamagitan. It's got a pygmy forest. It's just the most amazing place one could ever visit. It's a pygmy bonsai forest. It's a whole forest of bonsai trees, and it's just it's so unique and so amazing and so beautiful. And you're up in the mountains, and it's actually the only UNESCO. It's the newest UNESCO site in the Philippines, but it's the only UNESCO site in Mindanao. But so it's being protected. But when you're on the top of Mount Hamagitan and you're looking down into Mati Bay, Mati Bay is also a protected area. It's a beautiful bay. There's a mine at the base of Mount Hamagitan, just like this, and they're operating there, and they shouldn't be. And Gina Lopez actually shut this particular mine down, but now they're operating again. So,
Oh,
like
wow.
when you have these beautiful places that are, still largely intact, you have threats of mines and different things and different interests.
Yeah, I haven't even like heard about that. Yeah, that's why like I do believe in like awareness and like this advocacies that really promote this type of issues and just promoting the place itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so next one. Okay. Yes. Mhm.
This is an Agusan. This is Agusan Marsh.
Right.
It's
My wife is from Agusan, so I
Oh
kind of hear
really?
stories about
All
it.
right. Yeah, yeah. Have you been to the marsh? It's a beautiful marsh.
No. Right, right. I hear there's lots of crocodiles though.
Yeah,
That's what
Lolong, the
I.
largest
Oh yeah.
crocodile. And then
Uh-huh.
this is his home, Agusan Marsh. So they say that his partner is actually still in there and is much bigger. So I don't know.
Wow. I hope
But
not.
yeah, we would go swimming in here, no problem.
Right,
So,
right.
but yeah, so anyway, this is the Agusan Marsh. It's probably one of the most significant wetlands in the country. It's I think the size of like Metro Manila. It's huge, and it provides a lot of fresh water for communities, and a basin for the rivers too. Right, when there's flooding, it's like a catchment. It catches the water, but it's also the ancestral domain for some of these Manobo communities.
Yes,
So this
Manobo.
particular community lives on the marsh, and they live in floating homes. So as the water changes over the year, their their homes are floating. So it goes um, with the change in water. And this is how they get around from house to house in these barotos. Um, so this is how the kids go to school. This is how they bring in fresh water, rice. Obviously, a lot of their food here is fish. They catch a lot of fish. Um, but yeah, it's an ecologically significant wetlands. It's really important, and yeah, it's been protected by the Manoa people who have a spiritual connection to this marsh. So, but again, there's a lot of threats happening. There's a lot of deforestation on the mountains around the marsh. There's the mining, obviously, in Aguastan. We were just talking about that, and so a lot of the runoff from the mines, from the lack of forests on the mountains, it's bringing a lot of siltation into into the marsh. So it's changing things ecologically. There's a lot of burning that's happening around the marsh to grow different crops. So they're burning off some of the vegetation. So there's like in every place there's a lot of different pressures on these ancestral domains.
Right. And like I even hear from my wife like this Manobo tribe they're being tricked into say like cheap labor or like buying lands that are really cheap and like they're tricking them on the money and all those things.
Yeah, it happens all the time where people will come in and they a lot of times these communities don't know what a contract is or what certain types of money is worth, and they don't educational wise they might not what we seem as educated, but they're highly educated in their traditional
Mm,
knowledge of the area.
right.
In terms of like schooling and Western type of knowledge, they might not understand all of these different ways that bureaucracy and systems work, right? So they often can get tricked into signing things that they don't know what they're signing. They end up selling their land for basically nothing. I've heard a lot of stories that happen because of this. I mean, those are big things, but there's small things too, where these sometimes they'll go into a larger urban area and they'll buy something, and then the store owner won't give them the right change back, and so they're overpaying. They don't know anybody. They don't know. So a lot of the times they're taken advantage of in lots of different
Mm.
ways.
Yeah. Even my wife said there's one instance where they tried to pay, maybe just buy a bottle of water, I think, and they paid like 1,000 pesos just for that. And then the Manobo would just leave because he didn't know like what it's worth.
Yep,
So there's a lot of like things going
happens.
on like that. Yeah.
And it's awful that, you know, people take advantage of other people like that, right? But
Okay, this one. What are these though?
so this is a pearl farm. This is in Sulu actually. So this is
Oh,
a
it's pearl.
Sama Bajau man. Um,
Bajau, yeah.
Bajau, yeah. So the Sama Bajau people, they're seafaring people. They've lived on or close to the water. Um, and traditionally they would dive for pearls and also for fishing. But now in today's times, they're caretakers of these pearl farms. So this is one of the some of the job diving down to check on the pearl farm uh, in the area. So it's interesting.
Oh,
I mean,
still, yeah. They're still doing this up until now.
yeah, this is not that long ago. So yeah, the area Sulu, Tawi Tawi, seaweed is a big livelihood for many of the communities there. Um, there's a couple of pearl farms in the area. Um, anything sort of related to the sea is quite abundant there. It's a beautiful place. Um, but I've read recently that the Sama Bajau, they've actually evolved their spleens to grow larger so they can stay underwater for longer periods of time. So they're like genetically changing.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, it's pretty interesting. But they can stay underwater for 8, 10 minutes at a time to yeah. So
And so I assume these are the pearls, right? The ones in the nets.
oh
I'm
so
not so familiar.
right. So they because this is a commercial, it's a farm, so they implant the shell with I'm not sure how exactly how the process works, but with um, a piece of rock or something, and then the organism starts to build, solidify, and you know create the pearl around that, right? So they sort of speed up the process, but it's still made um, by the clam. Yeah.
Okay. So I assume this was like them being hired by companies or government.
Uh, Close, a little different. This is called a sabat, and it's a barter system. So this is an Aita community in Zambales. Around this is one of the tributaries of Mount Pinatubo. Um, so every weekend or every 5 days or so, there'll be this meetup where the Aita come and bring their agricultural crops, and the lowland trader will come in and uh, bring in the sugar, coffee, tobacco, rice, some of the necessity products that the community is looking for, and they'll barter. So there's no exchange of money. It's just a purely bartering system. So I think here they have like banana hearts that they have on this particular time, and they're trading. So yeah, pretty interesting that these things happen.
I suppose the barter is more like it's a fair barter, right? Like there's no.
It's hard to know if it's fair or not. There's another picture we're gonna touch on, and like tell you how it's not fair. In this particular case, I don't know what the exchange was, um, but in all likelihood, the lowlander is probably getting a better deal than the community is for what they're giving, probably.
Yeah, I'm just curious. What about for say the construction materials? So do they still do this type of barter system?
I think if like a household needed construction materials, they'd probably go into town and figure out a way to get back themselves. I don't think those kinds of materials are bartered. I think it's more basic, sort of basic goods, stuff that's easier to transport. Although maybe there's, they meet these, they meet every week or so, so maybe they can request certain things. I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
how that
Or
works.
maybe they're just getting from the forest itself directly, like the woods and lumber and
Yeah,
all
I
that.
mean, most of these homes are just native
Yeah.
homes anyway. Yeah. So,
Okay. Mm. It's cute, baby.
so this is
Cute,
actually in
cute
the
kid.
same area. This is hiking up to the forest, and this was a different visit actually. But during this visit, um, we were hiking to the grave site of where 115 Aita lost their lives during Mount Pinatubo eruption. Because during the eruption, there were a number of families and communities that didn't want to leave because they felt safer staying in the caves and staying in their community than actually going down to the evacuation camps where they were unfamiliar, they didn't know what was happening. So 115 Aita took shelter in like I think three different caves, and all but four of them died. So there were four survivors and 111 and died. So eventually those 111 were put into a mass grave. So we were hiking up the mountain to find this mass grave, and I was with one of the um, two of the sons of the one of the mother and aunties and cousins who died in the caves. So they were bringing us. We actually visited one of the caves and the burial site, which was completely covered by vegetation. They had to uncover it. It's way up in the mountain. Um, but yeah. Anyway, this is walking to this burial site, and we just stopped to have lunch. And this father and daughter were had a little camp set up there, and we cooked over the fire for our lunch. And so that's where this photo was taken. But yeah, we
Wow.
were on our way to visit the cave and hear the stories of how all of that came to be. So
And are there like any tribes who are like adapting them right now, or they're still living in isolation? This family.
so I mean, I think most communities have some sort of communication with lowland communities at some point. I mean, there are communities that are way in the mountains that probably don't get down as often, a bit more isolated. Um, but I would say most communities have some sort of contact with, yeah, lowland.
I feel bad, especially with the young kid. Like,
We've met you know students that from these highland communities that walk 5 kilometers down the mountain to go to school and then back the same day 5 kilometers. I mean, they cross rivers
wow,
and trails, and
five
it's just
kilometers is
pretty. It's not
long for a
it's not
kid.
an easy task. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But for
yeah,
them,
cause I
it's
yeah
like nothing. Like
they're used to it. Yeah,
it's what they do. So
she's not even wearing any slippers or shoes.
I know most of the indigenous communities, they prefer barefoot. It's easier to get
Right.
around. It's actually easier when in muddy conditions to hike with bare feet. Um, so
Yeah, I even seen like, well, not in the Philippines, but maybe in the Amazon or somewhere, that their feet are actually evolving. Right. It doesn't look like the feet that we have.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the spleen of the
Yep.
bajau. It's evolving.
Okay, this one is interesting.
Yeah, so you pick three sort of in the same area. So this is also in Zambales, and this is coming back from the Sabat, the barter.
Mm.
So and it had been raining heavily, so the river flooded, and we actually got stuck for I think 2 days, so we couldn't leave.
Wow.
And so this is finally when the river went down enough where it could start to pass. Um, but these are carabao with carts, and this is how they get all of their goods to and from the community to to the town. So
What about so Oh, you have to ride carabaos to cross the river, or you can walk it
We
by foot.
um trying to think what we did. I think we crossed on motorbikes here, maybe. Uh, I don't think we walked this. I think we took either tricycles or motorbikes across this. It was finally low enough. It looks deep, but it's actually it's
Yeah,
low enough here
the
to
dog
cross.
is crossing
The
even.
dog is crossing. So,
That-
but for 2 days we couldn't cross. It was too high.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
so is there like maybe not just the climate change, but because of deforestation that's causing this high levels of river water?
It could be partially due, but this is also the rainy season and this is the floodplain. And so the community is just used to, if the river floods, like you get stuck for a couple of days, like nothing you can do. So it's just
And
sort of
how
part.
long is this floodplain though? Like how many like minutes will you be able to cross it?
So you can see the mountains in the distance. That's where we were staying.
Oh
Um,
wow, that's far.
so yeah, a few kilometers maybe like across. It's or maybe 2 kilometers across at the widest. Yeah, so it's a large floodplain. Yeah.
Okay, this one.
So this is the one I was mentioning about how this is a Mangyan man in Mindoro, and they grow their produce up in their community, up in the mountains. And every Saturday they float it down the river because it's easier to float it down on these tire tubes than it is to carry it down on the trails. Um, so they float down their whatever produce they have, coconuts, banana, kamote, whatever it is, and they bring it to a trading site where the lowlanders will buy it from them. Um, so this is where the problem lies, is because over the course of the week, many of these communities or many individuals will take out some utang, a little bit of debt from the traders because they need to be able to buy, their rice or whatever it is they need. So by the time they come to sell their produce, the trader can set the prices very low and they can't say anything about it. So they end up getting a really unfair price for their produce because they have this utang. Um, so it's unfortunate, but this is what the community deals with, and this is what was explained to us when we were there, that they don't get enough to be able to buy the simple things that they need, and so they have this utang, and then they get even lower prices because they have this utang, and it's this cycle that they can't get out of.
Yeah. What about the government? Are they doing anything for to this issue? Like maybe make the trade more, I mean the market more closer to these tribes?
Um, Not that I'm aware of. Uh, it's uh, it's hard to know if the government does a whole lot for these communities from what I've seen over working with them. Obviously, there are agencies that do some good, um, but generally speaking, these communities are pretty marginalized in terms of um, economic economic things such as health, education, um, support for livelihood, these kinds of things. There's not a lot being done with these communities. More so being done with either religious groups or local NGOs or international NGOs. Probably have um, more meaningful, interactions with the communities than I would say the LGBTs or the.
And apart from like the unfair like uh trade that's going on, what about I mean this image alone is it like it's really dangerous for them to actually reach those markets, right?
Yeah,
They have to take the risk even just to get a few like pesos.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I mean they're used to doing this. Obviously, they're very familiar with the river, and but yeah, it's hard work, and
Yeah.
so they have to collect the harvest, and they have to tie everything up, they have to float it down, so it's demanding work, and then to get
Yeah,
it on the price. So
mm. Yeah, even from the documentary I saw, they don't even want to move closer to the city, right? Because they want to stay where their ancestors live. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's a better life there for them, and a lot of the times, yeah, and that's their home. So, uh, yeah, they don't want to leave their homelands. Actually, there's if anyone's interested in that particular story, I think Cara David did a with Eyewitness or one of her local documentaries. She did a particular story on this community. They had, they had tried to get to the community after seeing some of these photos. So it's I think it's in Tagalog. So if anyone's interested, they can look that up and they can learn more.
I think, yeah, this is in the mines, I suppose.
Yeah, so this is small scale mining. This is small scale gold mining. This is in Compostela Valley in Mindanao. So this is a Mansaka man. It's another indigenous tribe community. Um, and so in this particular river, upstream, there's a large industrial gold mine. I think it's Australian run. Um, and that gold mine, because of the runoff from the mine, they've actually declared this river biologically dead. So it's
Wow.
it's it's always red, and this is what I've been told. Um, but a lot of the communities nearby, they have small scale gold mining operations. Has a way to make a living, basically, but they do it in a lot of harmful ways. Like they use mercury still to separate, to collect the gold. So it's not really healthy for these communities. But again, it's like one of the only ways that they can make a living. A little, try to find a little bit of gold every day. So that's what they're doing here. Many of the community members work at the larger gold mine upriver, and it's one of these things where it's sort of a love hate, right? They get employment by the mine, but the mine is taken over. Obviously there's environmental problems from the mine, and the mine is supposed to be giving a certain percentage of their profits to the community under the memorandum of agreement that they have signed. But from what I understand, is that they haven't given hardly a percentage of that. Like I'm not sure. I think it's like 10, supposed to be 10%, but they don't even give probably a quarter of what they're supposed to give under the memorandum. So again, it's like issue after issue uh, with these, and this is their ancestral domain, right? So they have the right to demand these things. So they're not necessarily saying they want the mine to leave, but they're saying they want better terms and as to how the community is going to benefit from these projects, and that's their decision. That's them deciding for themselves what they want for their community or they don't want for their community. So,
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine like this stopping anytime soon unless they really deplete all the minerals in the area, right?
yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, they say that this is the Ring of Fire, Compostela Valley. Like it's rich in different minerals and gold, and so yeah, I think yeah, there'll always be pressure for mining there for sure.
Yeah. And as usual, we can assume that they're not getting a fair shake like when the small communities are actually trading for the minerals that they find, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who they're selling their gold to, and the middleman started taking a big cut. Um, but again, the big mine there should be giving back to the community under and they're not. They got community fund, and then the community decides what they want to do with the funds. And but again, that's not happening in the way that it should be. So.
Yeah, I mean, based on like what we've learned recently in the Philippines, maybe they're just giving it to the politicians instead.
Man, there's all kinds of like in Boracay, for example, and I think it was 2015 or 16. There's the Ati people. They used to Boracay Island used to be all of their ancestral domain. Actually, it still is, but because of development on Boracay, the Ati community on Boracay, now just lives on 2.1 hectares of land. Like they've been shrunk to this really small beachfront property. And I've been there, and they have the sisters there have built these homes for them, and they have like communal living and all this. But even that last 2.1 hectare spot of land, outside developers want this land. And so there's I think it's actually a Cebu developer at the time is having this conflict with the community because they want to build this last little bit of land. And Dexter, who was the community representative, he was shot dead. This was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. He was shot dead. And so, like these things continue to happen, the pressure on the communities, and they're fighting. So they can't even keep a small, when the whole island isn't taken from them, and then they can't even keep a small portion of their land without, people still wanting their land for whatever reason it is.
All for like this, like
It's all for
gaining
money. I
money
mean,
and
it's all, yeah,
capitalism. Yeah.
yeah, it's capitalism.
Mm. Yeah, I guess that's the last photo we have. But I want to know, like, obviously you've already talked to the leaders of these tribes and the community. Like, what can you gather that is a maybe a solution for like all these tribes to be able to be recognized and give them justice?
Well, I mean, that's the right way to think because like the communities already know what's best for themselves, right? So when we talk about like helping communities or what's the best way, it's really just you know, letting them have representation, and letting them be able to make decisions on their own without outside influence, without pressure. Um, and so how that is done, it's really just, supporting Indigenous governance, it's supporting their customary laws, it's supporting their educational rights, and for them to learn in the capacity that they want to learn in. So um, you might have heard, but there are a lot of Indigenous schools in Mindanao that were being shut down because they're saying that they're fronts for the NPA, and then there's or they get in between the NPA and the military, and the students are forced to leave. And these are schools that are recognized by DepEd, but they're teaching their students in a non they're teaching the basic subjects that you would get in any other kind of school here that's required by DepEd, but they're also teaching their values as a community. So they're teaching the value of community education, of every person in the community giving input into figuring out a solution. They're teaching agricultural methods, which are necessary for students to learn in their communities. And they're teaching about their beliefs and customary laws and their traditions and all of these things that the community deems necessary to teach their youth. And so we should allow that to happen, right? The education should happen as they want to be educated, right? They can have a mix between traditional education and outside education if that's what they deem is necessary. But it's letting the communities for themselves decide what it is that suits their communities best. And again, it's also figuring out ways to lessen the pressures from displacement, whether it's in Boracay or it's a mine or a dam or it's conflict. So once communities are displaced from their lands, again, that's when all of the trouble happens because you're gone from your land, your culture starts to fade away because you don't have that tie to the land. When culture fades away, languages start to fade away because they're inextricably linked. And your identity starts to fade away. So everything sort of comes back to the land. And the communities know this, right? They understand the importance of their homelands and why it needs to be protected and why they need to remain there. So yeah, I would say the communities know best as to what's best for them, but it's um, maybe offering awareness or a support in whatever capacity they need support in. Obviously, they need better representation in local government and in national policy. Um, so,
Yeah. How do you think we can obviously, because I can imagine like lobbying and the private companies being heard more because of the economic factors, but how do you think we can empower the voices of these like marginalized tribes?
um, it's a good question. Um, I, I don't think there's one answer. I think, we can all sort of help do our small part, and maybe all of those things over time, the public will start understanding the importance of why these communities' voice and their perspective on the world matter. Um, Again, like I was saying, the communities, not only in the Philippines but worldwide, indigenous communities protect 80% of the world's biodiversity, but they only occupy like 10% of the world's population or something, right? But so they're significantly protecting the the resources that the whole world relies on for health, for pharmaceuticals, for food, for all of these things, right? So um, I guess people don't really understand. Like if you look at it purely from that perspective, right? Like these indigenous communities are the stewards of the remaining wilderness areas, not really wilderness areas, but areas that contain this high levels um, of biodiversity, of water, of food, of medicines. Um, so not only that, but it's because of their unique perspective on the relationship with the land, right? And I think a lot of us have lost that connection to nature, or maybe some like youth nowadays maybe have never had that connection with nature. Um, so as much as like I hope that my photography can sort of spark some emotion in people so that they can have this emotional tie to the photos, and then maybe that will help them um, do something, maybe not, but what I hope is that they'll, I think the biggest thing anyone can do is just try to reestablish its connection with nature, whether it's going on a hike or taking 10 minutes to go into a forest, or just to like have this reconnecting with nature. I think that's really, really important, right? And photos can't really do that, but they can maybe help inspire or someone to go out and look further. But yeah, we need to take care of ourselves as well. And then like we need to watch what we eat, we need to exercise, we need to have these connections with nature, all of these different things, right? If we can't help ourselves, then we can't help others as well. So,
Yeah. That is why I think, because I have also interviewed a couple who was doing like this advocacy for bird conservation. So that's why I think what you guys do, like it could start with say photography, right? And that would like trigger their awareness and their interest in all this. Like especially like if you do it similar to yours, I agree. Like there is an emotional connection between that. So that's why I really think what you guys are doing are important. But okay, so I just have a few more questions.
yeah,
Um, this is more related to for those again who wants to pursue this type of path.
yeah.
So first is maybe like since obviously you've been to many places, more isolated places. How do you stay prepared in those trips? Like, are there anything that you're doing? Maybe like get
Um,
meds or yeah.
I guess every area is a little different because some are more harder to get to, some are a little bit easier to access. Um, some of the harder communities we would have to do like a 2-day hike to get to up in the Cordillera. So we have to bring all of our food with us. So we have to spend the night on the trail actually. And so there's a different level of preparation for that versus driving into a community that's accessible by vehicle or motor. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, like this is not about parachuting into a community and taking photos and coming out a few days later. it's really about relationship building with the communities and with the guides and everyone that's involved. And so, yeah, bringing gifts for the community is important, or bringing things that they need. Even simple things is really important. Um, Paying people for their time. If you have a guide from the community that's showing you around in the forest, like they're doing a service for you. So, just being respectful of what they ask. Um, and all of those things is really important. So yeah, every community is different, but yeah, bringing things for the community is important. And gear wise, I mean, yeah, it's the basics. Some communities have electricity, some don't. So got to figure out ways to charge batteries if you're going to be there extensively. But these are all like technical things that you can figure out if you're going into a place.
Do you find that you have to do like a bit of research and maybe get like special vaccines or
Vaccines, not really vaccines. I mean, some places I don't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. I used to take malaria prophylactic for different places, but I don't do that anymore. Just if you're going into a malaria area, you just want to be careful. You cover up. You sleep with a mosquito net. I mean, um, but aside from that, no, health wise, I mean, there might be some areas you want to bring in drinking water. Um, but you can also bring in filters that filter water. There's really useful filters nowadays. So again, yeah, it really depends on where you're going and how remote you're getting. You want to bring a sleeping bag, a hammock to sleep in, a tent maybe. You want to be more comfortable. I'm okay just like crashing in someone's, living room, outside on the bamboo porch, whatever. Like it's fine for me. Some pretty easy going with where I sleep, and the foods that I eat. There's typically always something to eat
right?
locally. Actually, the food in the is actually really good usually because it's all fresh and straight from the land. Um, so yeah,
And yeah, I guess from what we've learned also like respecting the spirits, right? You don't want to get on their bad side.
no, you just want to be you want to be respectful of what the community tells you. Um, And I have an interesting story actually. We were in Abra last year shooting in one of these documentaries for the film crew, and our guide we were out in the middle of like pretty out there, right? We got there by vehicle, but it was from Sagada. It was like a 9 hour trip, like up and down these dirt mountain roads, and we finally got to this community in Abra. Um, and Andong was our friend there that lives there, his family. So we were filming the documentary for a couple of days, and one afternoon we were going out to the river to go film some stuff by the river. And as we were leaving the last house from the community, there was a dead dog on the side of the trail, and it looked weird. Like it's just like this random dead dog. His stomach was kind of bloated. It looked really out of place, like this dead dog. And so I was in the back of the pack, and Andong and Chris were in the front, leading the crew as they were filming. Um, and I when I saw it, thought it kind of weird. Later on, Andong said yes. When we saw that, we knew spiritually something was the spirits of the forest were telling us to be careful and to watch out because there was something happening around. And so about 3 minutes up the trail from where we saw the dog, I heard this loud scream. And then Andong and Chris were like, get back, get back, get back. The cameraman that was filming, there was a venomous snake about to bite him on the because he had stopped to do something with his camera. And just on the side of the trail, the snake was about to bite him. And Andong ran over with his machete and got the snake before it bit the cameraman. But later on, we came to find out when Andong saw the dog, he took a leaf with mud and he put the stencils of the mud all over arms. And it was a way to protect himself from something that he knew was bad in the area from seeing the dog. And so by doing that, that protected them. And then, so it's pretty interesting. And so the cameraman wasn't bitten. They ate snake that night, but because Andong is from the area, he can sense these things that are happening when things are not right, and he has these rituals, the things that he does to protect
Wow.
themselves and everybody else. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
It, it didn't
it's
like bother like sharing his like put some like stencils on you as well.
But because I was in the back, I didn't know he had
Right.
done that until after the
Oh,
incident
okay.
happened. And I
Yeah.
saw I saw all the stencils and asked him, why did you do this? Yeah. So
For us, like maybe for us used to like this maybe Western type of religion, it's hard to understand. But you hear stories like that, and you can't help but appreciate it and believe it.
you really see this connection that people have with with their environment, with the spirits and the way that they things that they believe. I mean, it's real. Like it's
Um, yeah. So maybe two more questions. On a like personal level, for sure, throughout the years that you've been doing this, how has this experience changed you?
oh, it's a good good question. Um, I mean, I think it's changed me in a lot of ways. Like we were talking about at first, right? How I was taught from a Western educational system for my field of conservation biology. Um, we always left the human element out of the equation when the human element is actually the most important part of the equation because humans are part of the landscape. We're not separate from nature. We're part of nature, and these communities are the best protectors of nature, right? So this has been like an unlearning process for me over the course of this project is learning how these communities their perspectives are really not only important but actually more valid than what we have been taught in school from this other sort of perspective. So yeah, learning different ways to look at life in terms of these connections to land and why that's important. So yeah, it's hard to pinpoint anything particular. But yeah, every time you visit a community, you learn something and you sort of get humbled. And um, I want to say I learned more patience, but I don't know if that's true with the traffic here in Cebu. um, but yeah, you try to grow as an individual no matter what you're doing in life.
Mm,
And certainly all these experiences have added to that for me.
right. Yeah. And okay, last question, or maybe I'll give the floor to you. Like any final message to people about your advocacy through your photography?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it. I really hope that these photos can spark some kind of emotion and create some kind of change for good. um, but I also I really ask people to think about this idea of reciprocity and giving back what you take. And I think we've kind of lost that a lot in our daily lives. So if I take something from the forest, what am I giving back to the forest? Just it's not always a take thing, and that's sort of how we live every day. Is like, what can I get? What can I get? And we sort of forget about what can we give back, because the more we give back, the more we receive. And this is the way that many of these indigenous communities think, this idea of reciprocity. The forest protects us. Well, what do we do back to the forest, since the forest is protecting us? So we protect the forest. Um, and so it's just looking at things from that perspective. I think it's a great message to end on.